staff to work with the solicitor to draft the zoning amendments for lead regulations of data centers. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman Miller, members of the board. Yeah, so basically, we would like to work with our solicitor. Obviously, data centers have become a topic of conversation in many municipalities, and our zoning ordinance doesn't have any specific regulations for them. Chester County actually just came out with a guidance document for municipalities, creating ordinances, regulating them. So we would like to start the process of sort of drafting some language for our zoning ordinance if we do have applicants that come in. Just to let you know, I have not spoken to any applicants requesting data centers in the area, but we just thought with the county coming out with their document, it's kind of best for us to jump on, creating our ordinance. So we're requesting a motion to allow us to work with the solicitor to come up with the specific zoning language.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Do I hear a motion?
Motion. So moved.
All right, well, I'll have you as a second, I guess? Yeah. All right, any board comments or questions?
Sure. So basically, I think, one of the points that has been made is that there is not enough open land in Tredyffrin for a data center of the size that people are building. And in fact, if anyone is interested, I'd be happy to forward an article about a Meta data center that's being built in Louisiana, which is about the size of Central Park in Manhattan. Now, there's just not that kind of land here in Tredyffrin, but I think it's still important to have a data center ordinance on the books while we have time. And the reason is that today's data centers are large, and part of that is because the AI today is being driven a lot by training, and training requires these large data centers because you're dealing with these massive amounts of data. But the use of AI is changing, and there's going to be, training is still going to continue because even after they train these models on languages, they're going to want models to be trained on images and movies. Think about training them on all the old I Love Lucy shows and so on. So there'll be a lot of those to train. So training is not going to go away. But on the other hand, there will be more use with inference, which is the way that people would use AI models, and also small companies might do training on their own smaller data sets. The township might actually do training of a data set on all of our ordinances and minutes. And in fact, I did a little bit of experimentation on that. Didn't make much headway, but it's something that we could be doing. So those things require much smaller data centers. And what I see in the future is that, if you look ahead 5 years, you might see data centers that are the size of office parks. And certainly that is something which would affect Tredyffrin. So I think it's good to have an ordinance on the books just so that we're not caught flat-footed. And again, thinking about data centers, they need lots of electricity, they need a lot of internet connectivity, they need a lot of water. Now, I'm not terribly concerned about electricity and internet connectivity, other than the fact that the electricity consumption might drive up the rates for you and me. But water is an issue. So certainly, if you were to say, I'm going to put up a data center next to 3 Mile Island, next to the Susquehanna River, great, that's a good place for it. But, putting one next door is not perhaps such a great idea. And if you have a data center next door, the main concerns other than the water is the noise, because what they do is they bring in used jet engines from aircraft and use those to drive turbines for backup power. So if you have a data center moving in next door to you with all the fans and the jet engines, it's kind of like standing next to an airport. So certainly I'd like to see the ordinance in place well before we get any applications for data centers in Tredyffrin.
Thanks. Well, thanks, Ms. McPherson, for being ahead of this. Just so the public understands, just to repeat something that Ms. McPherson said, there's no application in front of us today, so we're not considering an actual thing. So this is just the township putting regulations on the books today, because if you don't have an ordinance and someone comes to you with a use that you don't talk about, that means you are not regulating it, and they could potentially argue it could go anywhere. So that's what this is about, just so people understand. So it's not like some scary thing that's happening. We're just trying to make sure we're a little bit ahead of it. And this county's done a really good job, so the information we're getting from the county is really good, so that's very helpful here. So just everyone understands that. Does that all make sense? Any public comments or questions? Yeah, sure.
There, okay. I guess the data centers are not necessarily the big roof type. I don't know, but I've been reading something about the importance of when you're making these plans with warehouses, that you take advantage of the surface and bring in the solar benefit from solar energy, benefits from the tops of warehouses. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but there is a concern that as you're developing the ordinances to consider at least the size of the building and whether it can be also used for environmental purposes. That's all. I'm not technically competent to make anything more comment, but.
I
No,
do think
thank
that
you.
was in the brief discussion we had on this. I do think that was in the county information and something that we're considering. So it's a great idea.
And just to be clear, Mr. Burgo has been looking at what's on the roofs of other buildings as they're getting developed in the township. So talking about roof, things on roofs is not a new topic in terms of green roofs and solar roofs and all that stuff. And it's something Steve talks about regularly. Sure.
Sorry. I'm just curious, I haven't read the county guidance, but I'm curious if you have an idea or see any gaps in the current zoning ordinance that you're trying to fill by, adding to the ordinance.
So we don't talk about data centers in our current ordinance at all.
But you talk about things like noise in the current ordinance. So I'm wondering what other specific gaps there might be that would be geared towards a data center.
Yeah, there's a number of different things. A lot of times the data centers come in as kind of these block buildings that are not very attractive. So there's, possibly things we could look with the facades of the buildings to make them kind of more compatible with other buildings in the area. We have to look at where we want these, which zoning districts would best be suited for this use. Like we talked about the energy consumption, a lot of these are, high power, and sometimes they even come in with their own sort of mini power plants. So you have to look to see, if there's any regulations you would put with that. We are on public water, so there's also regulations I've seen where townships are requiring them to, obviously be connected to the public water instead of drawing from, a well or something like that might drain other, wells in the area. So there's just a number of things associated with them. It is the noise as well.
Yeah.
But that's already, like you said, there is some language in the ordinance for, we would have to monitor it before and then after it was created to make sure that they weren't exceeding.
Just to understand, so what we're authorizing tonight is really the township to spend some money with our solicitor to think about all these issues so that someday if someone comes in and says they want to build a data center, we can say, we thought about it. Here's how it applies in our zoning ordinances. Here's some things we may or may not have to have changed so we can move forward in a way that seems organized and we get what we think we want in our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That makes sense.
We're not banning them or anything like that. That's not what's going on.
Oh, yeah, that's clear. So I'm just curious, this seems like a very potentially, clearly nothing's been generated yet. Seems like a very specific carve-out in the zoning ordinance. Are there any other carve-outs in the zoning ordinance right now for specific commercial enterprise?
Yeah, I don't think it's a carve out. It's just, we have a lot of defined types and uses. Aaron, you can speak to it more, but.
Yeah, there's definitely different types of, warehouse, commercial, and then there's some subsets of that, within that. And then we do have some facade designs already in the ordinance. for some of the districts. So, we would just be looking at all of that associated with the data center. Because the county came up, the county came up with the guidance document, we just thought it was the best time to kind of incorporate that into our ordinance. Otherwise, like Chairman Miller said, if a developer came in, they almost get to dictate what they want instead of us getting to kind of provide some guidance as to what we're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help? I mean, there's a lot of specificity in the zoning ordinances, so it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's helpful, thank you.
okay, thanks. No, thank you. Any other public comments or questions?
I had,
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't get a chance. I wanted to just add my support for this effort. I think a lot of the issues that we're seeing in our neighboring municipalities right now is because they are being forced to play catch-up because they did not plan in advance, and thus projects have come in to what Ms. McPherson just stated, playing with what is currently zoning in that municipality, which means they get to dictate the project. Us being proactive, while there is not any projects happening in Tredyffrin or being planned to happen in Tredyffrin, allows us to be ahead of the game should anything come up, so that we can be prepared for whatever may be to come. So I support this effort.
Thanks. Any other